What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, I wanted to showcase a team with Pokemon Go's mascot, Melmetal. This Pokemon, while it did not receive any direct buffs this season, is a great beneficiary of the Kyurem meta. It can take out all the Kyurems and all the Fairy types, which are very common right now, and it's a very spammy Pokemon as well with Thundershock. I'm also trying out Dragon Breath on Kyurem White just to see how it's going to play out. It's much better into the Dragon types, and it was a very fun moveset to use, so let's get into the battles and see what this team can do. First game of the day here, we're going to see Melmetal in the lead up against a Zygarde. This Pokemon is actually a bit of a tricky matchup here, right? It's a ground and dragon type Pokemon, meaning that ground is good against our Melmetal, dragon being good against our dragons in the backland. So I think the way that we can win this game is just by kind of chip and dipping this with a superpower and then trying to get as much fast food pressure as we can in the backline. Funnily enough, I guess having Ice Fang would be better against this Pokemon with our Kyurem White, but I don't think it's going to matter too much here. We're not going to likely see that matchup too often in the backline. We shield up and outrage there, so a lot of energy down the drain for them, and they end up coming in with a Solgaleo or Necrozma that is fused with a Solgaleo. This is a pretty good matchup though for Palkia, despite being a Steel type and resisting our Dragon type fast food pressure. We're able to get to another Aqua Tail here, which should either draw a shield or do quite a bit of damage to this Necrozma. That might have been a CMP as well if it was likely just on a Dark Pulse. This is not going to knock us out, and I might be able to get a farm down with either my Melmetal or maybe even my Kyurem. We're going to swap out here to our Dragon Breath Kyurem, get a nice farm down, and we'll see what their final Pokemon is going to be this game. Do they come back in with their Zygarde? No, they come in with the Ho-Oh, which is a Pokemon that our Melmetal does want to avoid since we are not running Rock Slide. In comes the charge if we're going to go for a nice Fusion Flare bait. Do they shield this up? At this point, they kind of have to shield something, and that is going to be a shield on the baited attack here. In comes an attack from them, likely going to be a Sacred Fire. I'm hoping for no attack drop. It is a 50-50 chance. Do they get it? Sacred Fire comes through, and no debuff from what I can see here. In comes another charge move here from us. Ice Burn is going to be thrown, and it will likely draw their shield. This move will definitely knock them out if they do let it go, and because they do shield it up at this point, they do save energy as well on that Ho-Oh. It could be a little tricky in the backline. With that said, we did see an outrage thrown by this Zygarde, likely meaning either Crunch or Bulldoze is their secondary move. What is it going to be? Bulldoze does come through. It could get a defense drop, and it actually does, which means that is a little bit risky for our Melmetal here to try to see. And comes a Double Iron Bash. It's not doing too much damage here. Honestly, Double Iron Bash is a pretty underwhelming attack, but because it is so spammy, we can just throw move after move and try to whittle down this Zygarde. Second move does come through, and as you can see, they are in range where maybe one or two more charge attacks could knock them out here. I'm going to go for a superpower now because they are at a Bulldoze. My defense is already dropped, so I'm just going to try to get as much damage as I can to put them into a nice Dragon Breath downrange. In comes that Ho-Oh once again, and they have to throw energy to knock out our Palkia, either a Sacred Fire, which takes a ton of energy, or a Brave Bird, which debuffs their defense stat. They opt to go for Sacred Fire, which means that maybe I can't get quite as easy as a farm down here, but we should still be able to go for a charge move and knock them out here before their next Brave Bird will be reached. Now that Zygarde might come back in, but if it does, I think we should still be able to win this game, just either with fast food pressure or potentially reaching a charge move with our Melmetal. At this point, our debuffs have been cleared. We do end up lagging a turn, meaning one Thundershock has gone to waste here this game, and comes that Bulldoze, though we survive because Zygarde is not exactly an offensive Pokemon, and in comes a Double Iron Bash to finish off this very bulky Pokemon. Melmetal able to close out this endgame here, and showing why it is still a very powerful Pokemon, even in those neutral matchups. Next matchup, we're going to see a Kyurem White in the lead. A very good lead matchup for us here. We'll see if they stay in, and they are for just a second at least. They're going for Ice Fang damage against us, which obviously is doing very little to us. And comes a Double Iron Bash. This is super effective, but it is not the strongest move in the game, meaning it doesn't quite get a two-shot against this Kyurem White. They're going to throw a charge move here likely in a second. No, they actually go for a Necrozma, which is a Pokemon that, once again, I do not have a hard answer for, so I'm going to go for a superpower and see what our opponent's going to do. I think I've played this opponent before. I'm expecting a second Steel-type Pokemon in the backline, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring out our Kyurem White here, knowing that while this is not a great matchup, all I need to do is kind of just whittle this down with Dragon Breath, Fast Food Pressure, and try to get shields if I can. We shield up an Outrage, which is fantastic news for us here. In comes a Fusion Flare, which should do quite a bit of damage, likely get a knockout if they do opt to let it go. Dragon Breath does do a lot more Fast Food Pressure in this matchup than if I had Ice Fang, which is kind of helpful, but at this point they do outpace us to this next charge move, likely an Iron Head or maybe even just an Outrage. I'm going to shield it up to try to force them into throwing another charge move. In comes another Fusion Flare here. We can draw their shield with this move potentially, and maybe swap out and catch a move on Melmetal. Let's see if we can get it. In comes the charge move, and it is going to be shielded. Our Melmetal is going to catch a move on 1 HP, likely is an Outrage. It could be an Iron Head though, and we have a decent amount of energy, but they do have a lot of energy on their own Kyurem in the backline, which could be pretty tricky depending on what they have. It is another Steel type, but a very interesting one. Heatran comes in here. I have one superpower. I might get a second one though before the Fire Spin down is going to happen. Can we survive just long enough? We can get the second charge move off. Is this going to knock out though after the attack drop? I know that this Pokemon is pretty squishy. Superpower is enough to knock out, and now they're going to invest fully in their Kyurem to try to suit this endgame. This is very scary, though. I know a Kyurem up this much energy has a ton of play. I know at this point we'll get knocked out by a Fusion Flare, but can they reach an Ice Burn before I get a Dragon Breath down with our Palkia? Fusion Flare knocks us out. How much energy do they have? They're going to go for the Ice Fangs, and in comes a Charge Move. They threw that pretty early, but I think that means they likely do have the Ice Burn. Will this one-shot us at this point? I just have to hope it won't. It doesn't quite get the one-shot, but we get a Simul KO, and they have a Pokemon in the backline, meaning that we do not end up winning that game. GG's to our opponent's very spicy team there. Next game, a Melmetal mirror match, actually. Person of culture here trying to use a Melmetal, but what is their moveset? Honestly, Melmetal is a very interesting Pokemon where you could run basically any of its moves, and you could have some reason to run it, right? Superpower is good for the Steel types, Double Iron Bash is good for the Fairies, and it's good because it's so spammy as well, and our opponent is throwing a charge move. What is it going to be? They go for the Thunderbolt, actually, a move that is also kind of good, I guess, against the Flying-type Pokemon, but because that was not a superpower, it's not going to be able to do that much damage to us here, and comes yet another charge attack, but since that was so soon after, I have to imagine this is a Double Iron Bash. We are able to no-shield this, and while we are at -2 defense, we are able to survive that, go for a full Thundershock down, and have energy against whatever is going to come in. They come in with the Landorus. I do not want to stay in that matchup, knowing they likely have a Pokemon in the backline that we don't want to see with our Dragons, and we are going to bait out a Dialga here with our Kyurem White. In comes a Fusion Flare. This should, at this point, draw a shield or get a critical amount of damage against this Dialga. We still have energy and HP on our Melmetal, so we should be able to win this game, especially because these Dragon Breaths honestly did quite a bit of damage here to the opposing Dragon-type Pokemon. In comes a charge move from this Dialga. I have a ton of energy on Melmetal, so I'll just shield this up, go for a back-to-back superpower, and even if they catch a move at this point, I am in a very good spot having Palkia, which would have a shield advantage against a Landorus and plenty of time to set up against this Dialga. Superpower does end up getting a shield, but our opponent does not swap out. This next one will be able to land, knocking out this Dialga, and now we'll have a shield advantage Palkia up against that Landorus in the backline. Palkia comes in, our opponent at this point realizes that game is over. GG's to them. Next matchup, we are going to see Melmetal up against a Ho-Oh. This matchup, while it would be good if we had Rock Slide, is a lot more awkward, saying all of our charge move pressure is going to be resisted, and the super effective fast moves from that Ho-Oh into our Melmetal would be pretty bad. We say swap our Kyurem, we get responded to by a Kyurem, but unfortunately for us, this is also a Dragon-type fast move on their Kyurem. Their Kyurem Black is using Dragon Tail, I am using Dragon Breath, and because of the extra chip damage that they got from the lead matchup, they're able to just barely farm us down, meaning that they do keep switch advantage. With that said, I know they're not going to be able to one-shot us with any charge move here on our Melmetal. I think just taking the shield advantage and hoping that Palkia in the backline should be able to win the game might be our best bet. At this point, Melmetal is not that useful. We end up actually taking a free shock here, meaning they will not get to a second charge move. We get a full Thundershock down, and maybe I can get another shield here if I bait that I could potentially have a Rock Slide. Superpower being thrown. Do they opt to shield this up, or will they just let this go? Our opponent does let it go, and now in comes our Palkia, hoping that it is enough to win in the endgame. For one reason or another, though, our opponent is staying in this matchup. It might be that they just want to chip us down a bit and swap into like a mirror match with their own Palkia, or maybe they're ABA weak to Palkia, which could be very good for us as well. They did get an attack drop there with a bait on that Sacred Fire. Very bold call by them, but it is paying off because now my attack has been lowered. Our opponent opts to actually shield up there, which means at this point the switch clocks have been pretty much desynced, and our Palkia has a huge energy lead against whatever's in the backline. It is a Landorus, a Pokemon which by no means wants to face off against a Palkia, and because they were ABA weak to our Palkia at this point, we should be able to close out this endgame just by spamming out Aqua Tails. The first one doesn't quite get a one-shot here. Our opponent does reach another charge move. At this point, a Sandsear Storm will do quite a bit of damage, but as long as I can knock out the Landorus before they're able to get to another Sandsear Storm, we can either Dragon Breath down or reach an Aqua Tail against that Ho-Oh. Aqua Tail is going to be thrown once again. It will knock out this Landorus, and despite all of these debuffs, Ho-Oh has nowhere to go against our Palkia. Our opponent top left, and we were able to win that match. Next game here, we're going to see a Kyurem White, or Kyurem Black, rather, in the lead. We're going to try once again to win this lead matchup, but our opponent safe swaps a Pokemon, which I have not talked about quite yet, but a Pokemon that is very strong into our team. Back when I was running this team earlier this week, when I had Ice Fang on our Kyurem White, this would be a very good Pokemon to see as a safe swap, but because now this Pokemon is just kind of free into our entire team, I have to go for Chip and Dip and hope that I can win this endgame matchup. In comes a Breaking Swipe. It does do super effective damage to us, but we don't get debuff, meaning we can shield once, farm all the way down, and after landing that superpower, this Pokemon is nowhere near as healthy as they might want it to be. Breaking Swipe number 2 does end up getting a shield, and unfortunately for them, it does not debuff once again. They could bring in that, what was it, a Kyurem in the lead, I believe. If they do bring that back in, though, I can go for a Spatial Rend and either draw a shield or basically get a one-shot at this point. In comes the Spatial Rend. Is it enough, though, to knock out this Pokemon, or do they just shield it up? They do opt to shield, so we get our shield back, but they do get a couple of Dragon Tails of energy, and our Melmetal has been chipped down quite a bit thanks to all that Mud Slap damage. At this point, I just have to hope the final Pokemon is going to be something that we have play into. In comes a Superpower against this Kyurem. Do they opt to shield this up, or will they just let this go down? In comes a Superpower, and they do shield, which is good for us here. I say swap our Kyurem to clear our debuff, and our opponent once again is staying in this matchup, which is pretty scary for us. I have no idea why they have not swapped out quite yet. Fusion Bolt does draw our shield. Our opponent going to try to get to another move. They don't quite get to it. In the back, though, going to be a Solgaleo. While this Pokemon is weak to Fire-type damage, I think that since this is a non-stab Fusion Flare, it won't be quite enough to knock out, and they might survive this, get a Psychic Fangs off into us, and potentially still win this endgame matchup. This is so unfortunate at this point, because Psychic Fangs is going to debuff our attack stat. I don't think I can win this game because they still have a Charge Move left over on that Kyurem Black. With that said, I can get a full farm down here if they don't have a charge move, or if I can survive it. Melmetal could potentially still win this endgame. We have a superpower after a full Thundershock farm down, but because they have that charge move loaded, they're able to win this game. Well played to them. They had a very interesting team and a very tricky one at that, so GG's once again. Next game going to be Melmetal up against an Annihilate. Okay, well, this is kind of the worst case scenario. A fighting-type Pokemon into our ABA weak to fighting-type team. With that said, Palkia as a safe swap is going to try its best to whittle down this Annihilate and see if they're going to stay in. In comes a move after 6 counters. I know for a fact that's just a Rage Fist. I don't need to shield up that move. And because they are staying in here and throwing Rage Fist, I would have to imagine they might just be willing to let their Annihilate go. I'm going to try to guarantee a shield with the Spatial Rend and see how they want to play out this matchup. Spatial Rend does end up drawing a shield. Our opponent at this point is going to reach yet another Rage Fist, which I think I do want to shield at this point. How else will I take out this Annihilate? I need to either draw the final shield or potentially land the Aqua Tail to get this Pokemon knocked out or whittled down into a range where it's not quite as big of an issue. At this point, I'm pretty fine though if they do opt to shield that up, because then I'd have a shield advantage on our Kyurem, but they actually end up letting that go, and they come in with a Rhyperior Pokemon, which I don't have a great answer to. I don't want to give them a farm down on that Palkia, so instead I instantly come back in with Melmetal, and I'm going to start spamming out as many charge moves as I can. Double Iron Bash is going to do a decent chunk of damage, but I keep on saying it, Double Iron Bash is not the strongest move in the game. It won't get a 2-shot against this Rhyperior, but it is so spammy that at this point, if they don't end up throwing a charge move soon, I can get to a third one. In comes a charge move now. What is it going to be? If it's a Breaking Swipe, we can survive it, but a Rock Cracker likely will knock us out. Despite being resisted here, it will take down our Melmetal, which is not exactly what we want to see. I think at this point, we need to make a catch if we want any chance to win this game. In comes our Kyurem. We do a couple Dragonite. We catch on our Palkia. Down goes our Palkia, but it takes a Rock Cracker with it, and because they are now down on energy, if the backline Pokemon is something that we can Dragon Breath through, we should be able to win this game. It is their own Kyurem, but unfortunately for them, they are rocking the inferior Ice Fang moveset in this mirror matchup, which means we can just shield once, farm all the way down, and start spamming out charge moves against that Rhyperior. We do shield up, we get a full farm down against this Kyurem White, and because of this, we have so much energy for the backline, and comes the first Fusion Flare. If they do shield us up, they're not at a charge move yet, so we can go for another one. If they no shield, we have won this game. Kyurem White able to close out this backline. GG's to our opponent. Very tricky matchup with that Annihilate, but barely able to close it out. Next game here, you're going to see a Palkia in the lead. This is a Pokemon, once again, I don't have a hard answer to this across my team, but also I'm not really weak to this either, right? Especially because I have Dragon Breath on both of my backline Pokemon. If I can land the Superpower, I can do quite a bit of damage with this, and then Dragon Breath them all the way down if they do opt to stay in when I say swap here with one of my Dragon types. In comes their secondary Dragon type, I guess. I did have to bait out this Dialga, I guess, but it's a Pokemon that I didn't really want to see here. I know at this point I won't get to 2 charge moves, so I'm going to go for an Ice Burn to try to fish for a defense drop, just in case we can happen to get it. Ice Burn does get a shield from our opponent, and Dragon Breath once again is kind of tripping through this Dialga's health. At this point, once again, our Melmetal is likely going to be able to drain all of the energy from this Dialga, and because a Thunder, I guess, is going to be thrown, I thought it was going to be a Roar of Time. I was going to say all of the charge moves would be resisted, but no, Thunder does do a little bit more raw damage there than I would like it to do. With that said, though, we are still able to neutralize this Dialga, give our Palkia a shield advantage, and hopefully win the endgame matchup. In comes their own Landorus, a Pokemon, which is a little bit tricky for us to see. Just because they came in first, it means they can get a debuff off against us and potentially start putting us into range where their own Palkia could win this endgame matchup. I can go for an Aqua Tail here in just a second, try to draw a shield from them, and potentially win this endgame matchup by either going for charge move spam or fast move farm down, depending on what they do. Aqua Tail does draw a shield, which is good for us right now, but because I can't shield this move, they have so much energy on this Palkia, I have to let this go and hope at this point that I can win against whatever they have in the back. I have to throw a charge move here before they get another charge attack against us. I'm going to go for this Aqua Tail and see what they're going to do. Aqua Tail does end up knocking them out here. In comes their own Palkia, and now they have so much energy. I don't actually know if we can win this endgame matchup. I played this game out a little bit poorly. I'm going to shield this Aqua Tail here and see what they're going to do. They will reach a second Aqua Tail right when I reach my double Iron Bash, but if I can survive this on 1 HP, I can get my own double Iron Bash against them, which should put them into Dragon Breath farm down range. Melmetal, such a beast, survives on 1 HP, gets off this double Iron Bash, and now if this puts them below health where my Palkia is, we should be able to win the race here to get the full Dragon Breath down and barely win that matchup. GG's there to our opponent. Next game, Melmetal against Landorus. probably one of the worst matchups we could see, especially because we do not have an Ice Fang Kyurem in the backline. Our opponent, though, instantly swaps out to their own Dialga once I bring in my Kyurem White. This is not looking great. This actually seems like it might be the same team I ran yesterday, which, if that is the case, could be a very bad situation for us. They actually end up throwing a Charge Move. I'm kind of surprised by that, because if they throw a Charge Move here, then that means that I could have CMP'd them, and they could have wasted a ton of energy against us, but because I didn't CMP, obviously, that means now they are not going to have to go down shields, and now they're going to get a full farm down right before I can get a second Fusion Flare. If you have just enough energy leading it to 2 Fusion Flares, you can actually win the 1 shield matchup. Unfortunately, though, for us, not quite enough energy to reach that next attack. And comes a Charge Move from this Dialga, likely a Roar of Time, which, while resisted, does a massive amount of damage. I'm going to try to get an energy lead with Palkia. They have their own Palkia, and at that point, Palkia has way too much to do in the backline. We are not able to win that game, and unfortunately, we do get RPS. Next game here is once again a Palkia in the lead. We've seen how this matchup plays out. I just like to go for the Superpower and swap out to my backline Pokemon. Superpower, while it doesn't get a clean 2-shot here, if I do get a bit of Dragon Breath damage against them, then maybe I will be able to get a Superpower knockout later on this game. We get quite a few Dragon Breaths into that Palkia, but then they swap out to probably one of the best hard answers here for our Kyurem in the entire game. This Primarina absorbs all of our Fire-type damage, all of our Dragon-type damage, and all of our Ice-type damage, which means they will not have to shield this move up. They can go for a full farm down and have energy for our Melmetal in the backline. We end up putting them, though, into a range where Thundershock should be able to farm them all the way down, and that lead matchup wasn't all that bad for Melmetal, right? If I get enough energy against that Palkia, then we can at least make something happen here. We also got a decent amount of Dragon Breath damage against that Palkia, which probably means that these Superpowers will start threatening HP, maybe even getting shields from them if they do end up wanting to keep this Pokemon around. And comes the first Charge Move here from Palkia. At this point, I will have to shield an Aqua Tail. I don't want to let my Melmetal go just yet, and in comes the first Superpower from our Melmetal. Do they shield this attack up, or will they be willing to let their Palkia go down and invest in their final Pokemon? No, they do shield that attack up. In comes the second Superpower, and if they no-shield this, I can come in Palkia and farm them all the way down. Superpower is thrown. Our opponent does let it go, and we get a snipe down against that Palkia before they can get another Charge Move off. In the back is their own Melmetal of Pokemon, which, while we have seen, it does have played to Palkia. If you can't clear your debuffs, especially if you don't have the proper moveset, this matchup is so bad for them. In comes a Charge Move. What is it going to be? I know it can't be a Superpower, because if it is, they instantly lose the game on the spot, because then I can go for debuffed Aqua Tails against them, and because that was just a double Iron Bash, it does nothing to us here. In comes the Aqua Tail. We're at back-to-back. We're almost going to be able to go for another one, even before they can get to another charge attack against us here. Will they be able to survive this move? Do they even care at this point? Aqua Tail does end up landing, and now I think we can just fast food them all the way down here. No matter what charge move this is, our own Melmetal can finish off this game, and I don't think there's a move that can knock us out from this range that they would be at right now. Double Iron Bash once again getting called. We go for a full Dragon Breath farm down. Melmetal goes down. Palkia able to close out that backline. The next matchup here going to be a Kyurem White in the lead, a Pokemon which does have access to super effective Fusion Flare, which could be a little bit tricky for us. This time, though, I'm going to play out the matchup just a little bit differently. I'm going to go instantly for a Superpower. Let's see if they do want to shield up their Kyurem. They don't, which means we get a critical amount of damage against them, and they are building up so much energy here. I think at this point they're going to go for a full-on Ice Burn, which means I will shield this up. I don't want to get one shot, and I want to farm them down if I can at this point. Ice Burn does get a shield from us. In comes a Xerneas in the back, and this Pokemon is a little bit annoying to see, mainly because Xerneas has access to both Fairy-type damage and also Fighting-type damage against potentially our Melmetal later on this game. Ice Burn, though, ends up landing, does a critical amount of damage to them there, but they are at back-to-back close combats now, which means I don't think I can shield this up, because if I do, they just throw the next one, and if I would have let that go, I still have to take another close combat here on our Melmetal. Great stuff. We lagged a turn once again here, meaning that we are down one Thundershock that we should have had against Xerneas, but I think at this point it's still fine. We can get a full Thundershock down, and because our Melmetal has energy, maybe we can go for a Superpower against whatever is going to come in. In comes a Shadow Rhyperior. We know this Pokemon is such a tricky matchup for us here. I think the regular Rhyperior would be a very winnable match, but Shadow Rhyperior just has a little bit of extra damage on it. They might be able to go for a play here where they just go for double Breaking Swipe, Mud Sap us all the way down, and win this game. I don't know what's going to happen here. I also know they also have a catch potential in the backline. If they do try to catch, then I will not want to throw an Aqua Tail into their Pokemon that comes in. In comes the Aqua Tail. Is this enough to knock them out? It should be, even with that debuff, because this Pokemon is so weak to Water-type damage, but they are able to outpace us. Breaking Swipe is going to do a critical amount of damage, but can we survive? At this point, I have to try to survive this move. I end up not reaching the Aqua Tail in time. They do end up knocking us out with that Mud Slap, and because we go down, we are not able to knock out the Rhyperior, and it's able to close out the game against us. Next game, a Palkia. Once again, in the lead, our Melmetal knows exactly what to do. Thundershocks add up a little bit over time, but Superpower is where the most amount of damage I have on my Melmetal against Palkia is going to be. We're going to throw the Charge Move and see what do they want to do. Once again, a No-Shield comes through, and we get a couple of these fast moves against them, but then they counter-swap with a Terrakion of all things, a Pokemon which is such a hard answer to our Kyurem here that I do not want to see it. Sacred Sword does a critical amount of damage to us, but with that said, Ice Burn is going to be able to knock them out or potentially draw a shield, which means that because we're able to survive that move, we actually get a shield advantage in the zeros. Iceburn does get a shield, but they get a massive farm down, meaning so much energy is going to be across the board on this game. In comes a charge move against our Palkia. I know that normally they're going to be running Rock Slide and potentially Sacred Sword as their charge moves, so not going to be too many heavy hitting moves to have to shield up here, but you can see just how much damage that first move is going to do to us. Sacred Sword number 2 will be thrown. It does another third of our HP here. I'm going to try to get a full farm down. Our opponent, though, swaps out to a Florges and actually gives us just a little bit of an opening. At this point, Florges, I know, has no charge move pressure against us. They might ramp up with Trailblaze. They might go for Moonblast. I guess they might not even have Trailblaze. They go for a Disarming Voice here, which is a move that by no means is going to be doing any damage to our Melmetal. With that said, they have a lot of health left across the board. They have a lot of just chip damage they can get into us, and I don't really know what move to shield, because if I shield any moves from this Florges at this point, they might be able to land a Sacred Sword against us in the back line, and that wouldn't be great, but at this point, I also am getting kind of chipped down just with these resisted charge moves. Another double Iron Bash has been reached. Our opponent is going to let it go. They survive, and at this point, I know this is just another resisted charge attack. I'm going to have to let it go, but we are so low on HP, they might be able to farm us down and win this endgame. In comes a double Iron Bash against this Terrakion. Is it enough, though, to knock them out, or will they end up shielding? We do get a knockout against them here. In comes that Palkia once again. This is going to be a very tricky endgame, but I do have a lot of energy on our Palkia. They might have to let this go, because if they don't, I can get a Spatial Rend against them. They do let it go. I can get a full farm down, just barely able to farm down everything this game, and win that matchup. Next matchup here, we're going to see Melmetal up against another opposing Melmetal. This matchup is such an interesting one, where both the times you're going to see Superpower coming back and forth, unless they are not running Superpower of their own. We saw earlier today a Melmetal running the Thunderbolt moveset instead, so if that is the case, then we can always win this matchup, but if they do have Superpower, then this matchup is just so weird, because you're both debuffing each other back and forth. In comes a Superpower from them. We have a defense drop, but because we got a CMP here, we should be able to either get a shield from them, or potentially a KO against the opposing Melmetal. In comes the charge move. Do they shield this up? At this point, I would have to expect that they do, because they have a ton of energy that they don't want to let go to waste, and in comes another Superpower from them. I don't think I want to shield at this point. We're lower on HP, and at this point, I have whittled down this Melmetal enough where I think we can get a nice Dragon Breath down with Palkia, and then hopefully our Kyurem in the backline should be able to close out this endgame once one of their best answers to it is gone. In comes another charge move, but they have almost no attack stat at this point. It is doing nothing to us here, and we're going to get a nice Dragon Breath down, but not before another parting Superpower has been reached. With that said, so much energy on our Palkia likely is going to go into a very good spot. Hopefully, we'll have to hope there's no Fairy type in the back. If there is, this endgame could be a little bit awkward, but no, luckily for us here, it's going to be a Kyurem White, a Pokemon, which we are instantly going to full send a Spatial Rend and try to either draw the shield or get almost a one-hit KO. They let it go. We get a Dragon Breath down. Our opponent at this point has only one Pokemon against our two. We have two Dragon Breathers in the back line. Honestly, if I have Ice Fang here, this might be a tricky endgame matchup, but because we have so much fast move pressure into them with our own Dragon Breaths, we're able to just fast move them all the way down, not needing a single shield to win that game. Next matchup, once again, a Florges in the lead. We know this matchup is one of the best ones I could possibly be in here. We're going to see a Palkia on the safe swap, and because we don't have a hard answer for it, I'm going to instantly throw this Superpower and try to farm down with one of our Dragon Breath users. We actually go for a bit of an undercharge here, because just in case they do end up no-shielding that, they are going to be in range where if I get a perfect undercharge, I can get just a little bit of extra energy on our own Pokemon, which would have helped out, but I mean, since they did shield, it didn't really matter. In comes a charge of it is going to be an Aqua Tail against us, and because I don't want them to reach a Spatial Rend and draw our second shield, I'm going to throw this Fusion Flare right before the next charge attack. It is a shame I can't farm them down, but because I do throw this charge move, at this point, they are likely going to be able to throw a charge attack against us before I can get a big attack off into this Florges. I could have gone for a Fusion Flare here, but honestly, I just wanted them to throw energy. I didn't want them to build up a ton of energy against us. Trailblaze does end up boosting their attack stat, but that doesn't really matter. Melmetal still is resisting everything they're going to throw. I'm going to wait down to switch clock because they are desynced at this point. In comes our Melmetal, and they are staying in this match, which likely means a boosted Moonblast will come through against our Melmetal, but that's totally fine. Still resisted. This Pokemon is completely out stat product here. Melmetal is pretty bulky, so we'll see how much damage this move is going to do. In comes the charge attack. What is it going to be? A Moonblast does get thrown. Just about half of our remaining HP, but we still have so much energy on Melmetal, able to go for one charge attack here. Do they shield us up? If they do, we can likely reach another one here before getting knocked out. Double Iron Bash does draw a shield, and at this point, our opponent throws another charge attack, but I think that was only a Trailblaze. We can definitely survive that, go for a no shield, and still reach a charge move against whatever is going to come in. In comes their own Kyurem, actually, a Pokemon which does not want to take a Superpower, and we also have Dragon Breath damage in the back line. All we need is an Aqua Tail against that Florges. They don't have any energy in the back, so as long as we one shield farm down, we should be able to win this game by going for a charge attack against this Florges when it comes back in. In comes a Free Shock. We do have to shield that up. That would have done a critical amount of damage against us, which would have done way too much for us to win the game. Luckily, able to win it there, and we are going to see in this next matchup a Meloetta in the lead. Meloetta is a Pokemon which is honestly, I think pretty good, right? It is super bulky. It has very good moves, especially after the Psyshock and Dazzling Gleam buffs in this season. And because this Pokemon is just so bulky, and because Double Iron Bash is not the best move in the game, because we resist their moves, we can win this matchup, but it's not as clean as you might expect it to be. Double Iron Bash, as you can see here, only doing like, I don't even know, like 20% at most to this Meloetta. Kind of as much damage as these Psyshocks are doing to us. In comes another Charge Attack. Psyshock does a ton to us here. We're well below half HP, and Double Iron Bash once again going to be thrown. I don't really know, though, if I want to stay in this matchup. I'm thinking they likely are a little bit weak to our Melmetal, so I want to save energy here so I can potentially superpower something if they do have a Steel type in the backline. In comes another charge move from Meloetta. Psyshock does put us deep into the red, but now I save swap our Kyurem, and I end up baiting out a Dialga. We have a ton of energy on Melmetal, so at this point, as long as I draw a shield from this Pokemon, I can definitely whittle down this Pokemon enough where I can go for double superpower against them and hopefully open up our Palkia in the backline. Fusion Flare does end up getting a shield against them, and now we don't quite get to another one. Right before we get Dragon Breath down, we do almost reach the move, but they are able to get a ton of energy out of that matchup. Once again, though, I know I have a ton of energy on our Melmetal, and instead of coming in with Melmetal, though, I feel like going for a one shield farm down against them with our Palkia. I know they'll only reach another Iron Head here, and it feels like energy just across the board could be a little bit more useful, which should help us out in the endgame. We have a lot of energy on Melmetal, we have a lot of energy on Palkia, we no-shield the Iron Head, and in comes a Rhyperior. So it's a very good thing at this point. I have so much energy because I need these Aqua Tails up against this Pokemon. If I didn't have this energy, they would probably sweep us in the backline. In comes their Fast Move Pressure. It's not going to be able to knock us out, though, before we're able to reach another Aqua Tail, so they are forced into throwing a Breaking Swipe. Even though if they do get a debuff against us, I think that we were able to one-shot them because Aqua Tail is super effective against both the Rock and Ground typing, and they are a Shadow Pokemon. Aqua Tail is thrown. Debuffed Aqua Tail still enough to knock them out here. We have back-to-back superpowers left over on our Melmetal. What are they going to do? Meloetta is still pretty healthy, same with that Dialga, so I have to go for a full-on superpower to knock them out. Is this enough, though? Meloetta is pretty bulky. In comes a charge move. It does knock them out, and we have the second one ready to go against this Dialga. At this point, this will knock them out here. Melmetal able to close out the endgame. I wish I had a Meloetta, but because we're able to beat our opponent's one, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world that I don't have one myself. So yeah, very fun day of battles. I don't know, honestly, if Dragon Breath on Kyurem is the play. It was a lot of fun as a safe swap Pokemon, but I didn't really bait out as many Palkias as I would have wanted to see today. It was mainly just baiting out Dialgas with this moveset, but still a very fun day of battles. Melmetal also putting in so much work, just having a lot of coverage against what the top meta is going to be in this, and because it's so spammy with Thundershock, Double Iron Bash, and Superpower, we were able to put in a lot of work here and finish off the day with a nice 4-1 set. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed the battles and you want to see more content like this in the future, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you again, though, for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.